Hey everybody, it's Dr. Spendit back here. I know we missed the video announcement last week, but I wanted to get back into it now with Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. Now that we've completed our first test and kind of at that halfway point of the semester, getting towards that, I wanted to cover some of the more important things I thought from Chapter 4 and 5 in your textbook. One thing I think when we talk about Chapter 4 and the use of conflict styles, it's sometimes easy to stop and consider the 5 conflict styles that are presented in the book, kind of the classic competing, avoiding, collaborating, all these different styles that we talk about, and it's kind of easy to look at them and say, well, that's just a really easy, simple way to define conflict. And for the most part, that would be true, but I think one thing that's really important that the book does talk about is how we need to realize that these types of conflict styles are flexible, they alter and they change during conflict, and sometimes they pair up in dynamic ways. So what I'm trying to say is I think we need to get beyond just defining the 5 basic types of conflict, really start, or 5 conflict styles, excuse me, and start really thinking about how they interact with each other and how they're a little bit more dynamic than just the labels they're given. Now, kind of moving into Chapter 5, we talk more about power, which is really an interesting thing. I think, if most people talk about conflict, the one thing that really seems to bother them the most is power. When people use power in direct ways and ways that really bother them or upset them, it really seems to be something that was a real issue in conflict, where the idea is, how can I get power? Well, I think the one thing the book really tells us about power is that it's not necessarily given or belongs to somebody, it's relational. In other words, in any given scenario, both people have power, and of course it's a matter of degree depending on a number of variables that the book outlines pretty well, but it's relational, and it goes back and forth depending on what you're trying to accomplish, how important the relationship is, and a number of other things as well. So in Chapter 5, I really think we look at those perceptions and look at that background that really gets us into conflict and how it really relates to power. And I think one thing that we tend to forget is that the relational power, hidden power, issue power, these are the types of power that are used probably more often than not. And a lot of times it kind of jumps our consciousness because we're so busy thinking about those direct uses of power. And I think the one thing we really need to get to in understanding how to be good conflict managers is understanding the idea of shared power and how we can get there. Of course, it's easy to read the textbook and understand and acknowledge the ideas of shared power, but then again, getting somebody to really follow suit with that might be a little bit more difficult. So those are some things to think about in regards to Chapter 4 and 5. Hopefully you had a nice fall break, I know I did, and hopefully everything's going well. Until later, talk to you then.